The auction block stank of disinfectant and desperation. Riven Tallis pulled his threadbare coat tighter as he scanned the merchandise line of indentured servants, bound by economic chains rather than physical ones. Technically not slavery, according to Commonwealth law, but the distinction hardly mattered on the frontier moon of Verustra. Next lot, called the auctioneer. A portly man with artificial vocal enhancements. Female specimen, non-human, classification stellarid. Contract, 5 standard years. Starting bid, 90 credits. Riven's attention snapped to the woman being led forward. Unlike the others, she moved with peculiar grace despite her obvious exhaustion. Her skin had a faint bluish luminescence that pulsed subtly with each breath. What drew his eye most were the delicate ridge patterns that traced from her temples down her neck, disappearing beneath her processing uniform. Not scales exactly, but something similar like crystalline formations embedded in flesh. "She's damaged goods," the auctioneer announced casually. Previous owner reported intermittent compliance issues, but she's got all her parts and decent technical aptitude. Suitable for domestic work, maintenance, or whatever else you fancy. A ripple of crude laughter spread through the crowd. Riven felt his stomach turn. 90 credits, he called, not entirely sure why. He'd come seeking a basic utility drone, not a sentient assistant. But his research facility was falling apart, and his deadline for the atmospheric stabilizer prototype was approaching fast. 90 credits from the gentleman in the back. Any advance on 90? Silence. No one wanted a potentially troublesome stellarid. Their species was rare in this sector, refugees from some distant conflict, if the stories were true. Sold for 90 credits. Congratulations, sir. Please proceed to processing for contract transfer and compliance measures. An hour later, Riven led his new acquisition through Verestra's perpetual twilight toward his laboratory. She followed 3 paces behind, silent and withdrawn, clutching a small metal case containing her meager possessions. "Do you have a name?" he asked, breaking the uncomfortable silence. "Previous designations are terminated with contract transfer," she replied in a low, melodic voice that surprised him. "You may assign a suitable identifier." Riven stopped walking. "I meant your actual name. What you call yourself." She hesitated, eyes widening slightly. "I am called Lyra. I'm Riven. I need help with my research facility. Basic maintenance, organization, maybe some technical assistance if you're capable." "I understand, Master. Just Riven is fine." He palmed open the door to his converted warehouse laboratory. "This is home. It's not much, but it's private." Lyra stepped inside, her gaze sweeping methodically across the cluttered space workbenches covered with half-finished devices, holographic diagrams flickering from outdated projectors, and the massive atmospheric processor prototype dominating the center of the room. For a brief moment, Riven thought he saw something flicker in her eyes, recognition, perhaps, or curiosity, but it vanished so quickly he might have imagined it. "I'll show you where you can sleep," he said, leading her toward a small alcove. "Tomorrow we'll sort out your duties." As she settled her case beside the simple cot, Riven noticed a thin metallic band around her wrist. The compliance monitor, standard for all indentured contracts. "Does it hurt?" he asked. Lyra looked up, genuine surprise crossing her features before she controlled it. "Pain is irrelevant to service," she answered carefully. That night, as Riven lay awake listening to the distant rumble of the mining operations that kept Verustra's economy alive, he wondered what he'd gotten himself into. There was something about Lyra that didn't fit the profile of an ordinary indentured servant. Something in her careful movements and measured responses that suggested she was hiding far more than she revealed. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm of quiet efficiency. Lyra proved herself invaluable, transforming Riven's chaotic workspace into a functioning laboratory. She organized his scattered notes, calibrated equipment with precision, and maintained a spotless environment without complaint. Yet she remained distant, speaking only when necessary, and retreating to her alcove during rest periods. Riven watched her from his workstation as she methodically sorted components for his atmospheric stabilizer. Her movements were economical, purposeful, almost machine-like in their efficiency. But occasionally, when she thought he wasn't looking, he caught glimpses of something else. Moments when she would pause to study a circuit board with unusual intensity or trace her fingers over the aging computer terminals with what appeared to be familiarity. "Could you hand me the particle modulator?" Riven asked, breaking the silence. Lyra approached with the requested tool, but as she placed it in his hand, the stabilizer core suddenly pulsed with energy, its indicators flaring to life. Riven jumped back. "What, the eye didn't activate it?" "Apologies," Lyra said quickly. "Static discharge, perhaps." Riven frowned. The core wasn't sensitive to static, and it had been completely dormant for days, despite his best efforts. "How did you do that?" "I did nothing, Master Riven," she corrected herself. "Perhaps your previous calibrations were successful after all." Unconvinced, Riven gestured toward the stabilizer. "Try touching it again." Hesitation flickered across her features before she carefully placed her hand on the device. Immediately, the core hummed to life, its energy readings stabilizing at optimal levels Riven had been unable to achieve for months. "That's impossible," he whispered. Lyra withdrew her hand quickly, the light patterns along her skin pulsing more rapidly. "I apologize for any malfunction." "It's not malfunctioning, it's working perfectly." Riven studied her with new intensity. "What are you?" "I am Stellarid, as registered in my contract." "That's not what I meant." He moved closer, noticing how the patterns on her skin seemed to shift and change with her emotions. "You understand this technology, don't you?" "At a level, I don't." She lowered her gaze. "I merely follow instructions." "No one follows instructions well enough to do what you just did." Riven gestured around the lab. "You've been fixing things I didn't even know were broken. My quantum resonator hasn't glitched since you arrived. The thermal regulators are running at 112% efficiency." A long silence stretched between them before Lyra spoke, her voice barely audible. "On my world, we were the caretakers of technology. Before the harvesting." "Harvesting?" "When the Commonwealth corporations came. They determined our abilities had market value." Her fingers absently traced the compliance band on her wrist. "Some were taken for research. Others, like myself, were deemed suitable for service contracts." Riven felt a chill. "You're not just technically competent. You have some kind of innate connection to machines, don't you?" Instead of answering, Lyra approached his main console and placed her palm on the screen. The ancient system, which Riven had cobbled together from salvaged parts, suddenly illuminated with cascading data patterns he'd never seen before. Subsystems he thought long dead flickered to life. "We do not merely operate technology," she said, a newfound confidence in her voice. "We communicate with it. Your machines speak a language my people were born understanding." Riven watched in astonishment as his entire system reconfigured itself, optimization routines executing at impossible speeds. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Those who know of our abilities rarely use them kindly." Her eyes met his, searching. "Will you report this enhancement to the contract authorities?" "It would increase my market value substantially." The question carried weight beyond its simple words. It was the first time she had directly asked about his intentions toward her. "No," Riven replied without hesitation. "What happens in this lab stays between us." Something shifted in Lyra's demeanor. A subtle relaxation, a small measure of trust granted. She pointed to his atmospheric stabilizer. "Your calibrations were correct, but the quantum buffer is misaligned. I can help you fix it." If you wish. Riven nodded, suddenly aware that their relationship had fundamentally changed. Show me. As they worked side by side into the night, Riven began to see Lyra not as property or even assistant, but as something he hadn't expected to find on this forgotten moon, a partner. What's this? Lyra asked, holding up a tarnished metallic sphere from the storage crate Riven had asked her to inventory. 2 months had passed since their breakthrough with the atmospheric stabilizer, and with each day, she grew more comfortable revealing her true knowledge. Riven glanced up from his workbench. Just some junk I bought from the salvage dealer last year. Said it came from the ruins on Calderis 4. Probably worthless, but I liked the engravings. Lyra turned the sphere in her hands, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into its surface. The markings resembled nothing Riven had ever seen, fluid lines that curved and branched like frozen lightning. As her fingertips moved across them, the patterns began to emit a faint blue luminescence that matched the color pulsing beneath her skin. This is not junk, she whispered. This is ... memory. Before Riven could question her, the sphere hung to life. Its surface separated along invisible seams, sections rotating and realigning until it formed a complex geometric shape. Holographic symbols erupted from within, filling the air around them with cascading glyphs that rotated slowly in concentric rings. Lyra, what did you do? She stood transfixed, her eyes reflecting the blue light as the symbols spiraled around her. I didn't. I merely recognized. Her voice faltered as the patterns on her skin brightened in response to the holographic display, creating an unmistakable resonance. The symbols began to reorder themselves, as if drawn to her presence. You can read this? Riven asked, watching as her eyes tracked the movements with clear comprehension. Not read ... remember. Lyra's voice had changed, carrying a melodic quality he hadn't heard before. These are the songs of creation, the mathematics of the architects. Architects? Those who came before, those who seeded the stars. Her hand reached out, fingers dancing through the symbols with practiced precision. With each motion, new configurations formed. My people were their final children, created to tend their gardens after they transcended. Riven struggled to process her words. You're saying your species was engineered by an ancient civilization? All were in the beginning. Lyra manipulated the symbols further, causing the hologram to expand and reveal star maps unlike any in Commonwealth records. Humans, stellarids, even the dominant Vixariol were shaped by the architect's design. But this truth was buried when the Vexari Empire rose to power. The compliance band on Lyra's wrist suddenly emitted a warning pulse, sensing her elevated biometrics. She winced, but continued her manipulation of the symbols. The Vexari discovered fragments of architect technology centuries ago, she explained, her voice strained. They used it to establish dominance, claiming divine right to rule. A Commonwealth is merely their latest political incarnation. They've systematically erased all evidence of humanity's true origins. That's historical revisionism on a galactic scale, Riven said, watching as the star maps revealed ancient migration patterns. The subjugation of my people was no accident, Lyra continued. We retain the strongest connection to the architect systems. The Vexari fear this connection. They cannot allow anyone to access the legacy networks that still lie dormant throughout the galaxy. As she spoke, memories seemed to awaken within her. The careful, submissive persona she had maintained began to dissolve, replaced by someone with authority and purpose. Even her posture changed, shoulders straightening, head lifting with quiet dignity. You're remembering who you are, Riven observed. I was a keeper, she said softly. Before my capture, I maintained the sanctuary archives on Lysithia. I was to be initiated into the higher mysteries when the purge began. The holographic display suddenly shifted to show a massive structure, crystalline spire rising from the surface of a green-tinged moon. Lyra's eyes filled with unspoken grief. This was your home? One of the last sanctuaries. Now, ash. The compliance band gave another warning pulse, stronger this time. Lyra grimaced in pain, but placed her palm fully against the hovering symbols. There is more, Riven. Much more. The architects left behind keys to power beyond the Viserys' understanding. Keys that require stellaride resonance to activate. Riven moved closer, fascinated by the transformation taking place before him. Is that why you were really sold into service? Not for technical skills, but because of what you might remember? The Vexry Ministry suspects, but does not know. Lyra's eyes met his, burning with newfound purpose. They hunt my kind, hoping to extract our secrets. But they do not understand that the knowledge is encoded in our very beings, our resonance. Patterns cannot be separated from our consciousness. The sphere suddenly collapsed back into its original form as the compliance band delivered a punishing shock. Lyra gasped, clutching her wrist. Riven rushed to her side. That's enough for today. He steadied her with gentle hands. We need to get that band off you? Impossible, she whispered. It's molecularly bonded. Removal attempts trigger lethal countermeasures. Riven's jaw set with determination. Nothing's impossible. Not anymore. He carefully took the sphere from her hands, studying it with new respect. We just need to find the right frequency. As he helped her to a chair, something shifted between them. A connection deeper than professional respect or even friendship. In her eyes, Riven saw not just intelligence, but ancient wisdom. In his, Lyra found something she thought lost forever. Hope. The midnight warning klaxons jerked Riven from sleep. Red emergency lights bathed his quarters as the security system announced. Proximity alert. Commonwealth vessels entering orbit. Authorization. Ministry of Cultural Preservation. He bolted upright. They had 3 weeks at most before authorities would discover the disabled tracking function in Lyra's compliance band. Yet here they were already. Lyra! He called, rushing into the main laboratory. She was already there, frantically gathering components while the ancient sphere hovered above her workstation, projecting navigational coordinates. They found us sooner than I calculated, she said, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her luminous skin patterns. How? The band's signal is blocked. Not the band. Lyra gestured to the atmospheric stabilizer. Your prototype. Its energy signature matches architect harmonic patterns. I should have realized. It's why I could interface with it so easily. Riven cursed under his breath. His breakthrough design, ironically made possible by Lyra's help, had become a beacon. How much time do we have? 20 minutes before ground forces secure the perimeter. She tossed him a compact energy weapon. I've overridden the laboratory defenses. But they won't hold long. The casual confidence with which she handled the security systems was yet another reminder of how much her true self had emerged since the sphere's activation. Gone was the meek servant. In her place stood a woman of remarkable capability and determination. We need transport, Riven said, quickly packing essential tools and research data. Already arranged. A slight smile curved her lips. I reprogrammed your delivery drone. It's waiting on the eastern landing pad with atmospheric capabilities. Through the laboratory windows, Riven could see distant lights descending through Varestra's perpetual cloud-cover Commonwealth dropships. The Ministry of Cultural Preservation, the Vexery's elegant euphemism for their historical suppression operations. They're not here just for a contract violation, are they? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Lyra's expression darkened. The sphere's activation sent ripples through the dormant architect network. Any stellaride with sufficient sensitivity would have felt it. The ministry maintains hunters specifically trained to detect such anomalies. She carefully placed the sphere into a shielded container. The coordinates are locked in my memory now. We have to reach the sanctuary on Ilara's shadow. It's the nearest node that might still be intact. The building shuddered as something impacted the outer defenses. Security cameras showed armored figures deploying around the perimeter. "This is Commander Thax of the Ministry," boomed a voice over the external comms. "Surrender the Stellarid female and all Architect artifacts immediately. Cooperation will be noted in your sentencing." Riven met Lyra's eyes. "I'm not surrendering anything." Her patterns pulsed with emotion. "You don't understand what you're risking, Riven. Defying the Ministry means more than losing your research or freedom. They'll erase you, not just physically, but from all records. Your family, friends. Anyone who knew you will have their memories altered. They can try." He reached out, his fingers gently tracing the patterns along her forearm. "I've spent my life searching for meaningful discovery. What good is that life if I abandon the most important discovery I've ever made?" Something shifted in her expression, surprise, followed by a warmth that made her luminescence brighten. Before she could respond, the laboratory's rear wall exploded inward. "Go!" Riven shouted, firing the energy weapon at the breach point. "I'll hold them off." Lyra grabbed his arm with unexpected strength. "Together or not at all. The knowledge I carry cannot be separated from what I am, what I feel." Her free hand activated a device she'd assembled from his components. "And I won't leave the first human who saw me as more than property." The device emitted a pulse that temporarily scrambled the Ministry Forces systems. In the confusion, they ran for the eastern exit, dodging energy blasts and debris. The reprogrammed delivery drone was exactly where Lyra had promised, a bulky, utilitarian craft never designed for the escape they were attempting. As they climbed aboard, Riven spotted a tall figure emerging from the smoke. Commander Thax, distinguished by the ornate insignia on his armor, marking him as pure Vexare elite. "You cannot hide the truth forever," Thax called. "The harmony of civilization depends on containment of the past." Lyra's hands flew over the drone's controls, coaxing impossible performance from the crude machine. "The past is never truly contained," she murmured, "only waiting to be remembered." As they lifted off, accelerating through Varustra's toxic atmosphere, Riven watched his life's work disappear in a series of methodical explosions. The Ministry was thorough in its erasure. "I'm sorry about your research," Lyra said softly. Riven shook his head. "It's just things, data." His hand found hers in the cramped cockpit. "Some discoveries are worth losing everything for." The compliance band on her wrist flickered and went dark as they passed beyond Varustra's magnetosphere. One small freedom as they fled toward a greater truth and greater danger among the stars. Ilara's shadow hung in the viewport like a forgotten jewel, a small moon orbiting, a gas giant in an unmarked system far from Commonwealth shipping lanes. Its surface shimmered with iridescent forests that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Lyra's quickening breath. "We've made it," she whispered, her fingers intertwined with Riven's as their stolen drone limped toward the sanctuary coordinates. "I can feel the resonance networks awakening." The journey had taken 13 days in their underpowered craft. 13 days of narrowly evading Ministry patrols, rationing dwindling supplies, and sharing quiet moments that transformed their partnership into something deeper. The compliance band remained on Lyra's wrist, dead but irremovable, a constant reminder of what they were fighting against. "What happens when we land?" Riven asked, guiding the drone through the moon's thin atmosphere. His face showed the strain of their flight-stubbled jaw, dark circles under his eyes, but his gaze remained steady and determined. "If any caretakers survived, they will recognize my resonance pattern." Lyra's luminescent skin brightened as they descended toward a clearing within the forest canopy. "If not?" Then we will need to activate the sanctuary ourselves. The drone settled onto the soft ground with a final wheeze of its overtaxed engines. As the hatch opened, they were enveloped in air that smelled of ozone and sweet blossoms, and something else, an electric quality that made the hairs on Riven's arms stand on end. The forests themselves are technology, Lyra explained, stepping onto the surface with reverent movements. Living circuitry, grown rather than built. The architects believed true advancement came from harmony with natural systems, not dominance over them. They followed a path that seemed to form ahead of their footsteps, the vegetation reconfiguring to guide their way. After nearly an hour of walking, they emerged into a vast clearing dominated by a structure that defied conventional engineering. A crystalline formation that rose from the ground like an impossible flower, its translucent facets containing shifting patterns of light. The sanctuary, Lyra breathed. No caretakers emerged to greet them. The silence confirmed what she had feared. This sanctuary, too, had been abandoned or purged. She approached the crystalline structure, placing her palm against its surface. Immediately, patterns of light within the crystal synchronized with those beneath her skin. "It recognizes you," Riven observed. "And you," she replied with surprise. "It's scanning your genetic structure, accepting you." A doorway materialized in the crystal surface, opening to reveal a chamber filled with technology, so advanced it resembled art more than science. At the center stood a column of swirling energy, pulsing with the same rhythm as Lyra's luminescence. "The sanctuary's heart," she explained, moving toward it with purpose. "It contains the complete repository of architect knowledge and the truth about all sentient species in the galaxy." As she approached the energy column, the compliance band on her wrist suddenly flared to life, sending her to her knees with a cry of pain. "Lyra!" Riven rushed to her side. "Emergency protocols," she gasped through clenched teeth. "They built fail-safes into the bands to prevent exactly this." The band constricted, its embedded filaments beginning to penetrate deeper into her flesh. Riven frantically searched for a way to remove it, but every attempt only intensified her pain. "The heart," Lyra managed, pointing toward the energy column. "It can override, but you must initiate resonance synchronization." "How?" "I'm not Stellarid. I don't have your connection." Despite her agony, Lyra's eyes found his. "But you do." The architects designed all sentient life with the capacity for resonance. The Stellarids were merely the most attuned. Humans have the capability dormant within them. She guided his hand to the energy column. "Focus on the patterns. Feel the rhythm. It's mathematics, music, and consciousness intertwined." Riven pressed his palm against the column, concentrating on the pulsing energies. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, something awakened within him, a sensitivity to patterns he'd never consciously recognized before. The column's rhythm began to synchronize with his heartbeat. "It's working," Lyra whispered, her voice strained. "Keep focusing." As the connection deepened, knowledge flooded into Riven's mind, glimpses of ancient history, the true origins of humanity, the deliberate suppression orchestrated by the Vexery. He saw how the architects had seeded life throughout the galaxy, how all sentient species were variations on their original design, meant to evolve in harmony rather than hierarchy. The sanctuary responded to their combined resonance, its systems fully activating after centuries of dormancy. The compliance band on Lyra's wrist shuddered and then disintegrated into dust, leaving only a faint scar pattern that merged with her natural markings. Free from pain, she joined her hand with his on the energy column. Their combined resonance triggered a cascade effect throughout the sanctuary. Dormant systems awakened, and a signal pulsed outward, connecting to other hidden sanctuaries scattered across the galaxy. "What have we done?" Riven asked, overwhelmed by the scale of what was happening. "Reminded the galaxy of its true heritage," Lyra replied, her voice stronger than he had ever heard it. "The signal will awaken dormant architect systems everywhere. Knowledge suppressed for millennia will become accessible again. The Vexery's foundation of power will crumble." A holographic display materialized around them, showing countless points of light activating across a galactic map, each representing a node in the ancient network responding to their signal. "They'll come for us," Riven said, thinking of Commander Thax and the resources the Ministry would deploy to maintain their version of history. "Yes." Lyra turned to face him, the patterns on her skin glowing with newfound purpose. "But they will find more than just us waiting. The awakening has begun. Other stellarids will feel it. Humans with latent resonance abilities will discover their potential. Even some Vexery will recognize the truth in their ancestral memories." She stepped closer, her luminescence brightening as she placed a hand against his cheek. "What we've started cannot be undone with guns or ships, or even their memory alterations. It will spread like light through darkness." "And us?" Riven asked, covering her hand with his own. "What happens to us now?" "That," Lyra said with a smile that held both wisdom and tender affection, "is a story yet to be written. But we will write it together as equals, as it was always meant to be." Outside the sanctuary, the forests of Alara's shadow pulsed with renewed energy as ancient systems reactivated planet by planet, moon by moon. Across the galaxy, the carefully constructed narrative of the Commonwealth began to unravel as the forgotten truth of their shared origins emerged from millennia of suppression. In the heart of the sanctuary, Riven and Lyra stood hand in hand, no longer master and servant, engineer and assistant, human and alien, but partners in the most profound revelation in galactic history. The price of liberation had been high, but as the knowledge of the architects flowed between them, they knew it was merely the beginning of something greater than either could have imagined on that auction block where their journey began.